There is a sickness in this world that has remained undiagnosed, but its primary symptom is what the Bible calls evil. Evil is not a sickness, it is a symptom of a disease. This disease can be identified and diagnosed. Once you know it exists and how to identify it, you will understand how to treat it, and if it does not respond to treatment, it can be eradicated or isolated. The point is, we will never have a solution for our social problems until we realize the nature of evil, and we cannot deal with evil until we understand it as a sickness. There is an incredible number of people infected with this sickness, and it appears the disease is spreading. What is worse, the disease is being brought into Western countries with the migrants. The simple fact is, that if you see an undeveloped nation or a country in which the people do not seem able to work together to create a developed society, you are looking at a country that is very, very sick. This illness is diagnosable in an objective and measurable sense. This means evil is manifested in a way that can be experimentally verified. Unsurprising, the very rich are carriers of this disease, as are those who live off of the government. But these are often only found in environments in which there is a large population of relatively healthy people. When the disease spreads unchecked, the likelihood is that the nation will be a poverty-ridden, third-world social disaster. And liberals are bringing these infected individuals into countries in which the proportion of the infected is relatively low, spreading the contagion. The dependent poor and the unseemly wealthy both share this in common. They are both dependent on intervention by the state. This is the crucial element in the disease. The infected need to be regulated and are always spiritually immature. Regardless, there remains a cadre of persons who remain reasonably free of the disease. These are agorocrats, which will be explained later. Think of them as people who appreciate the way the free market works, namely workers and the small entrepreneur. Those who reject or even fear market mechanisms are agoraphobic. People who are willing to work for an honest day's pay, those who labor and who through their work pay their own way, remain immune to the disease. The highest incidence of agorophobia is found in the state and the legislative bodies of the state. Agorophobia is actually a disease spread primarily by the state. The state has a problem beyond the disease itself: it cannot work. It has no value to give. Imagine being a bucket with a hole. You have no use, so what are you to do? You cannot do what you were designed to do, and so you convince the rest of the equipment that you are a funnel and all water must be funneled through you. But since you are the bucket, the water poured into you is transferred into cups and plates and various pots and pans, which are not suited for the task at all. The state must find someone who is sick and needs help, but since they cannot help, they also must find people from whom it can take what the sick need. In other words, the state needs the sick to justify its existence, and it needs the healthy to enable it to help the sick. The sick needs the state, but the healthy do not. Imagine a community of moral persons, none of whom steal or do anything dishonest. These are people who take serious the injunction to look first at the beam in one's own eye before being critical of the straw in the eye of someone else. In such a community, what would need to be regulated? There are in fact 10 great evils. These are in no particular order: unemployment, debt, poverty, inflation, pollution, waste, taxation, homelessness, war, and crime. Each and every one of these issues require government intervention. Agorophobia, fear of free market or being subject to the laws of supply and demand. It is also a fear of logic, of being accountable, as these are factors associated with the existence of a free market. In this context, at least, a free market is devoid of all regulation, as there is no state. Without the state there is no private enterprise, because private companies require the state to regulate them and the environment they are in. There is no private enterprise or private property without the state, unless said property is equally divided between the members of the community. If we have disparities in the level of ownership, there will be disparities in the amount of power different groups have. One cannot concentrate wealth to any appreciable degree unless there is a state powerful enough to protect the owners of this wealth. This need for the state is not simply due to jealousy. One person cannot accumulate a sizable amount of property. There must be a mechanism in place that allows certain people to extract wealth from others. All wealth accumulation is to some degree due to criminal enterprise. Indeed, all those who benefit from the illicit accumulation of wealth has to comprise a criminal conspiracy or enterprise, as it is only by presenting a united front can they prevent justice from being done. There is no way anyone can become a millionaire or worse, without committing an injustice. Naturally, within this system of things, no law is broken and all that is done is justified by the tenets of the system. But that is the system. It is a natural rights system or a system predicated on the law of the jungle. In this kind of system might makes right and the end justifies the means, so essentially, if you can get wealthy then by the rules of the game, your wealth and the means used to get it, are justified. What is not justified is failure. As a failure you become a pawn of the system and while you may be cared for in the way a domesticated animal is cared for, your humanity is stripped from you. Agorophobia as an illness is a fear of markets, or accountability, but it is also a fear of moral boundaries, or at least real ones. There are two foundations for moral doctrines, the one is man himself and the other is God. Agoraphobes fear ultimate standards, they want to be the judge of themselves, meaning they do not wish to be judged by anyone other than themselves. Man is a relative moral position because as humans our perspective changes from person to person. Because of this, to say that morality is a personal thing is to invalidate it and emasculate it and bring in the necessity for ethics. Ethics means we live by rules not by principles. However, the reality is that if we live by ethical codes, what we are doing is living by someone's moral doctrines that have been codified. Ethical regulations are nothing more than someone's moral doctrines codified and turned into more universal. This is done because morality based on human values relativizes morality and reflects a situation that is referred to as the law of the jungle. If all our moral beliefs are equally valid then none are valid and the only recourse is to revert to a primitive condition in which might makes right and the end justifies the means. Yet, there is no moral justification for arguing that because you are more powerful, your opinion matters more. Murder and rape are outlawed purely because the world disagrees that the law of the jungle ought to prevail in interpersonal relations, even if in practice it often does. International law is nothing more than moral posturing for there are not mechanisms for enforcement. International law is akin to social media in which public outrage can cancel you to some degree but cannot actually hold any true power over you. But even when we come to local and national systems of jurisprudence, what does the legal system do with people who see jail as a second home, and who have no assets? What punishment does the system mete out, when jail is a second home, and often a place where the prisoner gets to be housed and fed better than they would on the outside? The Bible tells us the man who will not work, neither shall he eat, but we feed, house and nurture those who do not only contribute nothing, but who have no intention of ever contributing anything. There are two races of people in this world, and they are not compatible. One could also say there is a disease in this world and it infects or attempts to infect healthy people. Good heath is not compatible with the existence of this disease. Another way of looking at the situation is to say there are two kinds of consciousness. The division is quite clear and simple. The Bible calls the two groups the people of the flesh and the people of the spirit. Another way of seeing the two populations is as the immature and the spiritually mature. We are all born in the flesh. It is a fact of life and a consequence of the environment we are in. We all mature physically. We do not all mature spiritually. The one race is the race we are born into as infants and some never grow to become adults in the true sense of the word. As children, we are dependents. To mature we need to become independent and indeed, to gain sufficient independence that we are able to care for dependents. These are the spiritually mature. These are those who are reborn in faith. Faith is misunderstood. It does not mean we believe in God, Satan and his demons do as much. Faith is a position of trust and it is reciprocal as it is impossible to trust someone who does not trust you. These bonds of reciprocal trust is the church and it is what the Bible talks about when it tells us the church binds on earth what is bound in heaven. There are only two options, either the powers that be have authority over you or there is an objective method of evaluating contributions. The latter is the market. It not only gives us an objective determination of what each person's contribution is worth, it disables the ability of leaders from imposing on us a false estimation of what they and their contribution is worth. When we give people authority over us, they create costs that they cannot repay, and so to prevent us from billing them for the money they owe us, they align themselves with others who have the same disease. This consortium of diseased minds impose costs on us without giving us a path to recover these costs. The only out appears to be a revolution which neither solves the problem nor truly gives us a way to reclaim the original costs. The penalty for trying to right the wrongs is higher than the original amount. There are only two kinds of people and only two ways to live. One either pays their own way according to the mechanisms of the market, or they are parasites. The state is a parasite that legitimizes parasitism. Agorocrats do not need the state, nor do we need its help nor its regulatory framework. We only need the market and to be let alone. We, like capitalists, call for laissez-faire. Unlike capitalists, we really mean it. If those who love the market do not need the state needs other allies. If no one who pays their own way needs the state, then the only other group available for the state to court are those who do not want to pay the costs they create, and these are freeloaders or parasites. If neither the state nor their allies pay their own way, then they must find a way to expropriate wealth from agorocrats. This is a logical necessity, and there is no way around this logical truth. We either pay our own way or not, and if we do not, we need the state to help exploit the people who do pay their own way. If you understand that if we all paid our own way, the Bible calls it observing the state in your own eye, we would not have any problems. Every problem is created by the expropriations of a freeloader. Parasitism is a spiritual disease. Because all problems are caused by freeloaders expropriating wealth from those who create it, it is fair to say all of our social problems are the direct result of parasitism. And that all we need to do is to separate ourselves from those who exhibit the symptoms of parasitism, agorophobia, to create a perfect and flawless system. Which is what the Bible has foreordained us to do.